humans.
Well, that's, I think, the differential factor. It's not all humans across the board hate SDG goals. Our point is that generally retail investors express a preference towards investing in ESG portfolios, but are generally not investing in the market or investing ineffectively because they don't have access to sustainable democratized governance.
I want to ask you about Advantage too. Do you have any reasons that more robo-advisors are good, or is it just like current robo-advisors are bad because they make the market unstable?
No, our argument is not just current robo-advisors are bad, but injecting more sustainable investment in the market that is not susceptible to the current retail trading problem of just investing in like meme, GameStop stocks.
What card do you think makes anything close to that? Because your
The
card
Kingsbury and the Gao.
there's a permanent destabilization of
Right. So the Kingsbury evidence establishes that there's investors who quote buy market noise and promulgate inefficiencies by incorrect trades that produce inaccurate valuations. Advisors share human biases which lead to mispricing, but tech eliminates the human rework because it changes price discovery, leads to greater wealth, and leads to a form of investment that doesn't chase like the stock of the day, but instead invests in
but if that form of investment did not exist in robo-advisors, we would not need good robo-advisors to solve bad robo-advisors.
Well, it's not just like it's just like bad investment of the status quo. The majority of investment of the status quo is human driven. We want a shift towards robo-advisory. Like that's the point of the AFF.
Okay, so then how do you stop humans from like
destabilizing the market? As people realize the benefits of robo-advisors.
Yeah, this kind of brings me back to the first question about advantage. If humans are broadly destabilizing the market and like whatever policies that they're doing they think are good, why would then they adopt robo-advisors that do the opposite?
Again, this is not like a blanket all humans want this way or want this way. We made a broad argument about the
but there's a sufficient amount of humans
the institutional preferences of different investors and the ability as more investment that is channeled towards robo-advisement enters the market that crowds out the market effect of existing investments and means that we overall access a more stable market.
Right, but how are there enough humans to like cause these effects in the market and then also cause the effects in the market and ignore this, and then also enough humans that would adopt robo-advisors?
As the robo-advice becomes democratized, the liability gap concern becomes resolved, more people will want to adopt the technology.
What is he said? It's advantage two. Yeah, it's the share. Yeah, it's advantage two. Anyway, I just had a huge flashback to that debate where Atlas was screaming and he couldn't hear anyone, and he was like, "Oh no, I'm jealous." Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was against Rome.
Yeah, it was against Rome and Florida. We've come full circle.
Oh yeah, those are my questions.
Here we are.
Hospitality, investment cars, that's real, right? 2726, constitution, good hours, reason for investment, with their finality, that's the right place. The whole purpose of it is the constitutional whole should be vested in the personality of great to right to make these schools with things from Buffalo, Africa, and different rights from individual groups, featuring and accessing numbers of the states, your person, DC, uniformation, legally investment, artificial intelligence, and performing roles to advisors, investment advisors, rights, fair, fiduciary, use, financial those agents, operators, those operators, clients, it can be spotted from the arbitrary price of federal power, investment, personalization, civil constitution, investment power, other things, charters, these documents, report on adjudication of federal business nexus of articulation here is the ultimate active choice not only analyze the things of political tax, which is joint interpreters of fantasy security, principles, and so in 23 on private to argue this is freedom and Cities currently have the worst living government and the powerful challenge driver to equality, eligibility, equity in school boundary, making recovery for social security, activities, and order to proposition, some significant investments in the resource use support, to better the proximity of residents of BC, vouchers for transit, economic and public best evidence, as used in the government from useful boundaries, by segregation by health experience, homeless communities, including corporations, and all the practice system for your state government, treatment, laws, and form function, and equal that are personality, community, here and there, and useful representation, almost everything is still in the list, and policy, inequality by distinction, and all to assist in the and service and schools, innovation, all the rest of the jobs, and every by every one of the classes, but rising and modern currency, short-term prices increase, little access to rights, next federal affiliate personal jurisdiction is rendered any student in states on purpose to contact a particular state as impossible for non-human persons necessitating an expansion of jurisdiction will be beyond the human cornerstone of the 1850 personal and the fact that the test and personal jurisdiction for the non-human and non-human personal is that the personal jurisdiction for the cannot be fully resolved from the losing personal jurisdiction rules would seriously erode the results of federalism because of the specific jurisdiction was the connection to the court and the action to seek discoveries beyond the by their season legal public state with villains by the actual public governance state that's the connection to doing the surveying all and extensively and horizontal federalism is water conservation politics action to progress rules for the movement to the federal last field community right demonstration to the end of the white house or the policy that between meetings for recovery for overturning special will of the terror to the other terms of those versus policy for life of our resource correcting order to be part of the political laws to develop the next speed more different than the law and resolution for discourse of cooperative movement and to work to even cover to use the rest of AFT support by the national policy to the government problem for the law of the order to battle and federal regulation reasonable for the federal insurance and water scarcity causes global wars partly and 15 global security war affairs and and alliance for the isolation battle for civilian officers and the for the next advantage to the United States should be an artificially only rule of trusting the advisory rate extra political adoption, but we promote to policy be effective in public and going such by 10 reasons as the appropriate rate extra to restore price and increasing the proportional opportunities and the totally unreached well represented and have expertise in the direction well when all the responsible kind of well of original strength and that's the original that can be only in way where the outcast project is proven by their use to meet the amplified economically versus economic constitution from all continuing from all our residents of the world by journal attention paid and the value from the projects and procedures to ensure and enforce the duties around AI and how long legislation is policy margin. It also needs record and open to the way from the law nation that we access to the school and the organization will be from the Africans and the local courts, ensure that the design of the rules are by associating other activities and invested in to be without the crucial projects. They develop usage of AI to simple collaboration doctrine and the AI to print and mechanisms to solve the customers. Even assistant user generation technologies for AI to be for energy tools like accelerating your algorithm and will spread the long term research and shadows overcoming instances of fear accelerating and instilling local price robot and ecological disruption and independent structure fears and consumers and most of the fossil fuel applying the means from commercializing pharmaceutical technology to the actual normal relay simply so that artificial intelligence and growth and describing the problem and the estimated for the normal remaining contributions to the protocol rates makes them possibly blue brown not radiation like that based on the world cost tools and we do considering that and information and we need to investigate the cost of artificial intelligence and involve other countries' combinations other countries' small emissions and there's aging world cost and extension and creation of any population and like usually we have a 16 regarding so they were for us to use all of the natural with the whole future and aging population to be under that now personalization of people disagree more about aging versus cost on the other about high control that
Good context?
Yeah.
Status of the conference?
Conditional status is always there.
You read all the
I read all the
off.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The Federalism VA, how does the AFF undermine horizontal federalism between the states and the federal government over public policy?
Yeah, so our argument is about personal jurisdiction rules. So, what comes from due process of the Constitution, essentially, if AI were given little duties, right, since they're not at home, they're not in one place, personal jurisdiction would not apply the way it does now to humans. That would sort of cause an expansion of personal jurisdiction broadly because the legal system is transpersonal in terms of jurisdiction. There would be no
It's an expansion of personal jurisdiction precedent.
Is the link to horizontal.
Why is that precedent limited now, and why does that implicate wider conservation?
Yeah, sure. So our argument is that because states would be able to steal cases from one another because personal jurisdiction starts to sort of allocate authority for cases to specific cases rather than across the states.
And
then that would undermine the whole evidence.
That undermines state water disputes.
Yeah, the horizontal evidence specifically talks about regulated industries, consistency, economies of scale, compliance costs, ensuring people comply to water regulations.
The term on actually the counterplan on the case is the net benefit just the term, or
I guess all the distance. But yes, it's meant for
the term. Then why does the AFF undermine interest rate hikes and the need to curb inflation?
Yeah, the empirical evidence says that robo-advisors do not provide the sort of assurances to consumers that humans can provide. So in times of economic bumps or as the Fed is engaging its rate hikes.
Well, if they don't provide the same assurances, then why? If that's true, then why would we adopt robo-advisors? That seems just like a solvency claim.
well, that zeroes the app. But also, robo-advisors.
Well, yeah, but that's a solvency claim. You can't use that as a link argument.
What do you mean, but yeah, we'll go for presumption. Both advantages are gone.
Sure. But that's the link. It's people don't believe in robo-advisors, so that collapses the economy.
We think that robo-advisors are more prone to exacerbating panic and sell-offs when there are times of economic risk.
Only human agency can integrate unexpected info, apply human minds more nimble and capable.
They cause mass asset sell-off, immediate economic crisis.
The soft law counterplan, why does it avoid politics?
Because there is some positive evidence, says that a congressional resolution makes it a signal, but it does not have the actual force of law. So why not have something?
What does it mean to not have the force of law?
Because it's a congressional concurrent resolution is Congress urging.
Oh, so it doesn't actually legally bind any actors?
It doesn't legally bind any actors.
Doesn't
It causes follow on.
So what? It's just Congress strongly declaring something?
That's what
We have to been following.
Good to know. We're actually, that's fine. The civility advantage.
Okay. The Congress softball complaint. The state's complaint. The municipal personal complaint. The federal news act. And then the politics.
We're gonna take the volume from like a 6 to like a 10.
Yes.
The no enforcement part is held to generic planners enforcing a contract which are delegated, which have the duties delegated to Roman advisors group. The turn one, no, not all non-Roman advisors AFF impact 2 million units of the turn AI Roman advisors going now 3 air assault the environment gas 22 air support transition to civil rights by averaging then poverty amounts to contributing towards the environment loss our first one is going to enable numbers of names population overseas machinery and rights and homes and rights United Nations parties of use fertilizer and reduce environment and reduce governmental damage. Other countries don't dominate this instance because the US controls global financial markets. The food does not solve all trends like deforestation, seal the rise of warming is another now sort of try or die for advisors to change sustainable investment. Yes, aging impact carbon is not too resource loss make life on earth impossible. Yes, fire terror they have means of voting to the question. Effective biotech innovation people to prevent them. Yes, disease impact carbon since the US NEG because of extinction the stability advantage first counter and one per remote investigating the class entities but also submitting those entities are illegal to firm federal government ban artificial intelligence agents performing the role of trusted investment advisor for the state to plan to confirm the state's ban artificial intelligence agents performing the role of trust-based investment advisor for the federal government as a plan. It always turns into qualification, so just a question of the term below. Now, term one, rate your old news 4 or 5 times. In the past year alone, group investors don't think that split the current inflation has to not even quote. It's already set risky in the 27 was record in the 2700% increase. I was saying about this market pressure conflict others violent increases the number of capital no rational investment that we're talking about. We have to go down the not in the same mistakes. I was in court for sure much data. Use that meeting higher volume. Majority prices every round for real time value 3. Roman investors saw they don't see a growth 1 capital organization first. A shift from one from retail speculation 1 from credit investing stabilization. Roman police code 2 bias to the worst Abraham and 2. Measuring leases were discussed on discussed is going to require structural rotation. This is a big loss. These capital gain producing capital income from tax representation additionally frequently reduced by 100 by the on domestic security investment foreign investment in a population not used by slow regulation control and success security question transparency efficiency control efficiency capital efficiency rational investment what efficiency concerns security market opportunity once for all people about an asset or price for investment facility and also these asking more that's why it's multiplies well population of that's what we financial risk given the more complete power their evidence is the thing that thus when the populous site for rescue evidence not having to do weapons it's not relevant to our internally by responsibility people by my population investment is the value it's not some scale of financial crisis would occur without commercial channeling sustainable investment institutions can't check populace if the populace control the institutions talk about invest one time information investment partial from second year from our previously the same from partly the all this for example like fleeting from our missing that one part usually no single that after publication 2 particular items is constitutional 3 and pursue the right it's not about the duties for all limiting these graphs and it's interpits impossible 5 functional in the series person it's very well tolerate the net easy 6 reasonability is good enough to keep 1 for judge value to pass this plan as keep parents 5 and pretty much issue 2 case out when all the impacts of the case are negative time more than 7 or 3 verification code 4 in all cases all Roman advisors or encourage AI information 5 choices is total nonsense journal 17 is ecological calculation to rush the 2 passes on 6 no listen of physiologically 5 or 3 even if we're fully focused on social actions of self-interest level by rushing to social space of cultural matrix line of every student in the investment sector that possesses the woman by how you know the social life himself women study our functional the social offer of section normative the softball capital 1 per remote 2 per the capital 3 obviously this is that benefit to take some congressional action for solve none of the assets the duties are not legal and consumers do not operate over because there is no way for them to enforce the duties 5 under the plan through a concurrent resolution 6 non-legal reform generate uncertainty that crashes over advisory verification investor previous construction regarding reforms that have to revise this between more reforms that are legal let's hit the scales of this issue good amount of investors will want to do these class for investors advisory no mention without Lunar Hamilton standard over investment papers simplification of devices that practice instruments. We already heard about the coding in Scottish law to go into the competition. See the overall devices said the only hard law rules to solve self-laws on multiple generics and certain groups that the initiative regulate weapons and not sleep with the sound of force reality security top line something here's the problem that the conversation with the United States and fitting for the movement finding that's insurance threat, protection or critical obligation service based on economic verification for certain risk confidence dramatic industry effectiveness aid conditionalities no issue based use that's fund opportunities that keep power what specifically solve states one permanent vote two permanent power neutral one determine that states vote use designate alcohol or the Costa Rican government space interior to the US when you get everything that has to be solved as secure something to talk to the US or talk to the state United Constitution laws of the relation to these United States the plural in the collective term the United States by the 50 States DC created solve a certainty is government for our advisor that which is that a lot of deep aspect in the 22 the second one classified into an advisory contract or represent transfer has been false using of these numbers something is going to be that you have to actually not good see over the central capture Open administration combination with ledger, or in certain personal pictures, recognition like sales, to make that consumers do not see for individual order, accepted with three branches, right? You can go, interest level, the e-sig, except for the e-sign, target contract is insurance valid, and legislation insurance, target to leave, for level, page, price, and single, is very good, you all right, instead of the talks, we have 5, or 50 safety odds, but issue positions to make always with topic, and it's basically about the same, so it's totally utility, non-uniformly solves, municipal, personal, category 1, urban, vote 2, urban, category 3, urban, pledge, hold that incorporated cities are not legal persons for cabinets, which are functioning better key force. The beneficial rate is like the 5. Person is not key. Cities are doing unequal things. If you just do that anyway, 6 all classes, races, and gerrymandering, social study cuts at the federal level, municipalities don't control any of that 7. No inequality impact must see this inequality, leading cosmic below brain makes sense. So as someone established for relationships and life, uninfluenced power around the control, not know what issue that actually perceived justice rather than measure, opportunity hierarchy commission, leaving aside how inequality actually trying to perceive positive less than possession also that from 8914 inequality not have any significant effect. The federalism side, one, know that the plans of Fed and states that church cooperation not legal, variations to the plan side of sweet generous, easy cap, never legally as Roman residents that have a consolidation independence right, having worked with the merchant state that never first really recognized the in the corporate sector, Delaware State will petition organized for the AFF person that you can call out for legal records to legal sides of the sides of the thing mission possible to I think versus the people taking over this region to 43 no still reports on the federalism over person who does not implicate water conservation policy GP. It's stated action on environmental rights in all costs for no spill over between policy areas federalism scholars and no parts under control of right as people should be different accounts and different resources are forward and choose all at once to prevent levels of accounts of our systems and actually very practice and mandates central variations of the actually receiving nutritional content federalism only be hashtag content from generic also one person not contributing unaccessibility safe forward revolution people 35 notice like the water war federalism is just about USA they don't talk global scarcity institutional water war reality 22 conservation with economics and everything increase security water means target percent is a choice squad is common overall media actually cooperation on conflict from birth daily poverty not leaving conflict reducing water security or not water services not unusual burning decide 1 0 lane culture agency action show less than 10% obligating is wrong public students themselves and research people run body issues without behavior or take the age low short and also take investigation the 80 rates set this is the 80 problems 2 dead 75 problems 3 won't pass the DC 15 shelters and on holdings crazy numbers not to the clever to hold it some cost less crazy second along including the ball fifth party and second trainers only this recording from the past let's make it harder build new project forces to the public to cooperate on perform public negotiations and dealing inflation reduction active number set 4 STB versus STB4 STB versus the Silicon Valley banking dumps 4 it's market 5 latest 5 drugs like simplified and these would cost 60 is not intrinsic logical plus we can do both 7 the next 5 or compartmentalized program need 18 neutral customer each possible not application with micro water and package will come. Build by our shipping instead of swap. Or count on the same result. We find something improve the information. Work our work. Of course, I should log in. This one is 8 winners win. 8 winners win. Change component. Let's make you by shooting folks to investigation. It's like that's what the more you extend, the more you have to find research to do. Positive things about what you more. 9 internal link learning. It's not key to energy security. This is sort of solid 10 no impact energy. It's not key to international stability. 11 Nord Stream pipeline bomb. 12 gas solve impact by maintaining economic stability. 13 fiat solve delay. Back to the Congress counterplan, certain regulatory environments, key innovation, IEE 17 illegal, processing water grid information, like the writing sense, AIS is essential, removing some cases with obligation, execution, organization, and operation clarification will occur to development, and implement AIS and thereby liability. Back to politics. The after change Congress, the judicial action that there's the labor Congress held 21 the corporate rights Congress held to help me and issues like the third judicial opinions right focus was becoming politicians elected problems was a key to issues on the agenda that could endanger the judicial review makes it struggle or getting political cover legal information. However, it provide political cover the key thing also a voting issue is it makes it impossible to generate ad hoc.
I think that was just.
Yeah. Wait, so the party just centers on what? On the municipal diversity conflict, there's argument for to vote. How do you vote hold in unlawful independence?
We do it under federal law and the other under policy. And this person at the local level. It's still not a thing.
Why do you think that firm to vote does that? Like we just
Because,
changed it after the
all the other pages we've established then can either be the states or the federal government. So I think that's a legitimate interpretation.
Why, okay, I'm gonna ask my question, the last evidence you read, the no inequality impact card says results remain mixed and cites studies from 2003 and 1989. Why do you think that should be referred to 2022?
Well, the card is from 16. First of all.
Cites
Second,
studies to draw conclusions.
well, when studies conducted even in the modern day under the literature review cite past studies to come to conclusions about things. So I don't think those studies made from 83 or 2003.
I mean, it says quantitative studies struggle to establish a firm relationship, and it cites studies where, like, 30 years
Again,
ago.
I think that is fine, because when you're writing an article that updates previous studies, you cite the previous studies to support your argument.
The aging crisis internally, the Sunni evidence is all about Japan. How does the absolute Japan's aging crisis?
And I think the impact is about, so first of all, U.S. controls global financial markets, so that's important. Second,
Wait, why does Japan have robo-advisor adoption in the U.S. mean that Japan's aging crisis is?
well, no, our argument is that if
Do like the Japanese put more money
because
in
of
their
the U.S.'s
investment
influence
accounts?
on
Like,
global
what?
financial markets, that would ensure, prices.
Why?
Because the first card in the stability advantage says it affects the global economy. Explicitly says
So
that.
let's say more than that. Like, why do you mean affects the global economy? Like, what does that do to solve the
Because
crisis?
the U.S.'s financial institutions.
Well, our internal link is like the aging crisis is a capital crisis, right? And if you have more economic output generally, that affects the global economy. Then you have the ability for more economic growth in upper sectors of the
The
economy.
next scenario, the evidence about AI-based investors channeling capital to Dartmouth startups says that the use of AI by investors and funders to support startups helps avoid failures. This evidence just says that investors using AI now solves, like, why is AI having fiduciary duty or
It
AI
doesn't say
acting
that. It's-
independently?
The card explicitly says that despite the existence of capital, it's not being allocated efficiently. So that means that bad startups that are not producing innovation are getting a lot of capital, which we think is bad and does not produce the breakthroughs or evidence that says
All
it's necessary.
lines are about why AI right now and robo-advisors being used by humans is
I
channeled
disagree.
into investments.
I disagree. I think the
I
evidence
read
says
the whole
the
thing.
evidence says that the capital needs to be channeled efficiently to startups that are actually producing socially beneficial innovations. Currently, capital is being allocated inefficiently. We think that's
Where
the
do you,
thing.
I mean, like, just, like, everyone asks for a line, but like, this evidence just doesn't say that, it says this expert's fine. Where do you think it says that?
I disagree. That's why the evidence refers to inefficiencies several times. That's what it's referring to when it says the scope is solved.
For like all of your T stuff about the states, you're saying that it still has to be collective action, not that you're one state.
Yeah.
That you're the state's property. Okay, the order's the personal jurisdiction DA, and federal DA. Then advantage 2, so the econ thing, and then advantage 1, democratization.
Can you do that again?
Yeah, so it's just the federalism disact,
Okay.
then advantage 2, and then advantage 1.
Democracy is advantage.
Okay, is anyone not ready?
Feel like we're ready if they turn this fan off, but
I'll
I
be loud.
complained, and I fully Karen to everyone that
I'll be loud.
I love it.
Okay, anyone already? Cool. Water scarcity goes nuclear, global crisis already strengthening the system, resource scarcity prevents cooperation, makes nuclear states separated. First, the fragile peace has excited since Cold War. The U.S. scarcity is enough because it's a form of military power and supply chain or interpreted as totally evident ecology and it's just not turning environmental protection in the circular economy or in key child things. Here's water only horizontal cooperation does that, but the cooperation also solves environmental protection, so it's try or die neg. That's the whole evidence. We'll straight turn both advantage one. The plan causes raping, forum shopping with national effects. That text advantage one that's coming 14 well. Design jurisdiction rules takes the incentive to design efficient rules and poorly designed personal jurisdiction encourages to transfer both around to state litigants and takes parties and loose road rules allow plaintiffs to choose among the many courts that give notice and incentive to be plaintiff to attract litigation while number of just can have a national impact. Its courts are biased defendants and insufficient incentive to avoid harm potential defendants being taken against behavior prices and exit the market. Two, forum shopping is trusted delicate balance that promotes tech innovation. That's more. One, forum shopping increases the unpredictability of law and its application increases the likelihood of parties will litigate IP of right or critical in spurring tech innovation in the evaluation and exclusivity of the ability to enforce this innovation and unpredictable the patent's value decreases cycle innovation and will die for resources from R&D to litigation costs and uncertainty will decrease innovation by unpredictability spending or contracting. Neither will promote innovation both modify the incentives for carrying the plan and to be the careful balance that has been structured by innovation that turns advantage 1 and 2. That's trend 22 Spartans need patent recognition and patents provide us with exclusive rights to use tech patents avoid legal protection which can avoid costly legal disputes and patents are crucial for the success of a startup. Now the first argument that we see is the plan is the bad in the states that ensures cooperation on legal regulation. Broadly, the issue with the 2AC is that they answer federalism, not horizontal federalism. They are talking about federalism in the sense of the 50 states and the U.S. government. We are talking about federalism across the states, which means their no link arguments are actually the link because the argument about the states taking collective action is our argument about why we have consistently narrowed personal jurisdiction across the states and the federal government now, but the plan reverses that because now we have limited that where someone may sue to only some states, i.e. where the substantial intentional activities are occurring, but then the plan would force an expansion because AI has no physical location or intention. AirNet, because the foundation of existing personal jurisdiction is human person, and that's Minkowski. Also, the lawyer does not get to go for this no link argument because they do not cross-apply to the dissent. We don't link. If we don't win the link, then no negative on presumption because without the jurisdiction of AI, lawsuits against them simply won't happen. That makes the evidence work with the one error. Does not brace a car on jurisdiction insolvency in the context of states and assign them zero risk if they contest the links to machine learning will top the existing personal jurisdiction doctrine. That's his ultimate personal procedural jurisdiction will not be adjusted targeting universal availability. It will be the fundamental ultra machine learning on personal jurisdiction. Machine learning problems on concepts of personal element by allowing purpose to initiate behaviors that result in the causes of action without a human involvement. Suggesting a universal standard of personal jurisdiction might be unnecessary. The plan forces the national standard for personal jurisdiction. That's Angel 20. The personal jurisdiction will need to be adjusted to machine learning, and the machine learning algorithms are assigned to operate independently of human involvement. This is particularly concerning for personal jurisdiction. The course of liability is up to open as to who can be sued. Another question might be where can suit take place, and there's no basis for pursuing AI as a person in the single natural contact standard could work for machine learning and natural approaches to personal jurisdiction must be adopted. Now the plan is not easy to count. Expansion of personal jurisdiction against apply to every type of defendant. They have no evidence and spillover in the context of our link. There is strong unquestioned Northern American procedure to treat every entity the same way across states, across the federal government. Prefer 4 years later, people or link that evidence. He's explicitly contemplating expanding personal jurisdiction to a duties personal jurisdiction and transpersonal doctrine. That's Minkowski 14 personal jurisdiction and unified transpersonal doctrine. If it applies to all types of entities, has denied upwards of flexibility to craft rules and incentive to essential differences between entities with and without a corporal existence, and the two halves of the doctrine are shackled together. If the plan does not do that, then that text solvency that's Minkowski 14, the transpersonal norm supports procedural values and clarity, uniformity, simplicity, judicial efficiency, procedural equality, and naturality. A single set of procedural goals apply regardless of whether the litigating entities are coherence, price, and future procedural systems, and adding provisions for multiple types of litigants, and not only has unpredictability but might destabilize the existing coherence of the rules and the procedures tailored to different personhoods would increase the risk of inconsistent results. Transpersonal norms isolate procedure from political wrangling, and transpersonality increases efficiency in litigation. Now, horizontal federalism does solve water scarcity. It's the ideal governance model. UP and state inaction is uniqueness for us. Our argument is that the states can actually overcome constitutional limits on federal environmental regulation that also textile solvency. But if federal action is key, then it's necessary to the starting gaps of the term only goes neg entrenchment, built by and in policies and local politics is the law. But it's any argument about GOP or all that stuff doesn't matter about vertical federalism because they've answered the wrong internal link gap. Where's the impacts linear? That's bound for the states are increasingly interconnected and networks and state lines to formulate solutions to contemporary problems and burden of the number of the states joining together the potential to solve major national problems can have competition and inherent in a federal structure for state officials to the horizon and looking laterally rather than vertically presents opportunities and new challenges. Now, the next argument, the yes bill over the revenue system 2012 about federalism, I fed to states, that's not changing law in the states. Now, the 2AC on the internal link, I will read the full sentence. No internal link to water wars. Federalism is just about the US. They don't solve global water scarcity. I don't care what Tyler has to say in 1 year about this argument. The 2AC did not answer that. Completely squeezed ball strategy. They don't get any new arguments. We have specific parts that answer this argument. First, that federalism is just about the US. Our argument is about how the US sets a global model for water scarcity. They don't solve global water scarcity. It does not matter because our argument is that personal jurisdiction is calibrated to serve horizontal federalism. Now, United States from overreaching by hearing lawsuits that belong to other states with a national exception will make it a free-for-all for us in competition that solves that jurisdiction and widely overlooked aspect of federalism allocation of authority between the states and the relation to horizontal state must cover within its limits created by the existence of the other 49 mark the part there because they cannot make this argument. Now, the impact stuff highlighted like a fortune cookie. It doesn't even make an argument for why water scarcity doesn't cause war. The link between scarcity and war is robust. As Code 23, the socioeconomic political challenges associated with freshwater pose a risk from continuous population, ecological destruction to violence of water-related conflicts and are all the rising factors driving such violence and worsening in the refusing of conflicts has grown in disputes during severe restorative conflict and weapons and policy causalities or targets. Now, advantage 2. Perm 2 goes links to the term because it grants rights to robot advisors to exist. 1. Grant the plan confers rights on all confers rights in the context of robot advisors. The plan bans that all right. This is not specific to the app, but a verb cannot act on an object that doesn't exist. That will be in the 1 and R2. Affairs and education, the accountability directed bans the object of the plan that is most germane in direct form class. If not, you might as well vote on no and fiat. The other 2 terms also don't apply. It has the Fed banning I, and then have the states to the plan or vice versa. Severance is 1 half must overturn the plan, but both link to the term because it means that robot advisors can still exist at either level. I will repeat again with the choice you said in full on top of steps. It doesn't solve the case, obviously, so it's just a question of the term below. That is a drop counterplan. We explained in 1AC and 2AC counterplan why the counterplan solves the issue because banning robot advisors solves all the arguments. It doesn't have a reason why more robot advisors are good, and the 2AC does not extend the internal link, so no reason why current robot advisors are bad is a deficit to this counterplan. Before I go to the term, I'll go to solvency. There's 0 evidence that imposing a fiduciary duty can solve the downside risk of robot advisors. You should be left with a ton of questions like how exactly the duty is imposed, what the penalty is for non-compliance, how do those be enforced on an algorithm. But the big issue is they have no evidence that actually says that enables a Goldilocks approach to their bastardized highlighting of whatever this internal link is. Now, the evidence agrees the Gallup evidence is not saying that legal personality solves it says robot advisors are inherently dangerous. I'll answer the card here. It absolutely zeroes the advantage. The term that they say right tax are old news. That's our argument. The Federal Reserve is such to increase interest rates in an attempt to fix inflation that sort of makes investors anxious and puts them on the edge, but they'll avoid the impulsive panic and freak out on the status quo that allows the economy to reach a soft landing. That's the white evidence. Now, the uniqueness argument is about card from 2020 that says the economy is risky. Now it's a Kingsbury card. He has a BS in health science, so him and I are as qualified in just a month from now. They're wrong about uniqueness. The economy is headed for more interest rate hikes, but an overall soft landing is happening. The status quo, the Fed is currently set to threat the need of taming inflation, but if investors panic, then it will mess everything up. That's capital markets are stable. That's back in 315. The U.S. economy is healthy and labor conditions allow and provide support for the soft landing as long as policy makers avoid any limiting policy news, and those signs are good that the U.S. economy will remain create jobs and goods and services in areas based on economic growth. Remember, really declines in household continue to increase spending and business spending. Investment continues to grow. Inflation settles back to 2% by the late 2023 as businesses solve the supply chain issues. No economic volatility now. Big rate hikes are pulling the economy. That's Schneider 22. There is consensus that the Fed should raise the rate around 4.5% a week and bring inflation down quickly while also avoiding a recession. Economics are usually behavior the economy would allow the Fed to just live without unemployment. If we navigate the path of carefully traditionally better order to show unemployment is rising and the president's equation pretty good looking soft landing. These certainly are not recession-like numbers. Our link turns once the case and causes a fast economic decline and massively outweighs on time frame. The plan causes a sharp increase in the use of robot advisors that causes an economic disaster and economic shock because when rates have come, the humans will be able to reassure their clients, but they cannot. That's the future. And more evidence, NEG, human financial advisors saw that's price money. They code demonstrated the crucial role of financial advisors and now turning to discretion and advisors. Certain crisis counselors working to reassure clients and keep them in from panic and emotionally driven reaction that carries severe negative consequences. We've seen financial professionals become versus just critical to the survival of many small businesses and the thought that robot advisors have replaced human professionals seems entirely impossible, and the financial advisors are critical force for good. Only panic reactions cause mass freak out actually kills the economy. That's where obviously 22 Americans should stay calm. The Fed hikes interest rates and the rate hikes are right through the economy, and despite the conditions, households can make moves to maintain a solid budget. Don't panic. What you absolutely shouldn't do. I think this law is following a role likely to make risky decisions that panic sign all of your stocks. Now, robot advisors don't solve economic stability. The 2AC red new internal links, but drops our link term 1. They just set up ways to organization on time, and that's link 17 in the market production. I trust in human advisor as opposed to a non-nominated one can be an ace in the hole. Robot advisor knows how to deal with the market slides. Only human advisor can curb it. Investors were simple as it is during the economic market downturn when investors make an intentional mistake. Human advisor can bolster confidence. A robot advisor can't. All market parts, they are the bias stuff. It doesn't say if it causes economic stability, the impact is huge because robot advisors will still cause market bloodbath in the interim, which proves that we have on time frame and robot advisors are less efficient, which answers their third link argument. They run more links without answering the link term, which means they can't solve. Now, Wabiel's war, escalation has zero uniqueness, more empirical sphere, where institutions, sex wars, Trump, Putin, she all have nuclear weapons, which means that it's terminally thumped. Now, the link is huge. That's more 20. The impact on probability of robot advisors is not yet panicked, and investors may be in their investment strategy, but from the roasted guy, and there are critical things that people can do better than computers. Financial professional can help overcome impulsive devices. A robot advisor may not ask the right questions or gather information, and when they invest reviewers off track, it may be easy to ignore market agents. A robot advisor might be. Or it Actually, I'm going to do that with Grace first before Cousins. Yeah, I'm going to edit it. And just I would like.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
What is the internal link between the plan and the state's exercise of horizontal federalism for water conservation?
So the Hall card, the Bowman card, etc., they all explain how every increase in horizontal federalism encourages more collaboration to solve natural problems. It talks about how horizontal federalism allows us to overcome constitutional
I
limits on
understand that.
federal.
Sorry. My question is, why does the plan implicate existing state efforts to do that for water?
Yeah, for sure. So the Hall evidence says that the reason that horizontal federalism matters is because of personal jurisdiction, right? So having minimum standards to prevent sort of a race between the states to the courts toward regulatory industries provides consistency and economies of scale
Okay,
that forces businesses to comply with water regulations.
Why does the plan end all personal jurisdiction?
Because we've read specific pieces of evidence that says that procedural law is transpersonal in the United States. You do not contest that.
Okay, so we did actually. All your
No, you
cards say
did.
if AI was a
Absolutely
person,
did not.
you said if the AI has legal personhood, then this would occur. You read cards that said the plan confers a sui generis rights that can only be delegated via contract law. So how
You're
would it
literally
accomplish
bullshit. Your 2AC card does not say that. Your 2AC card is an answer to a different skill we're disad, and then your second card is like federalism.
Okay,
and
I get you think
federal-
the 2AC didn't answer. I'd still like you to answer my question.
Yeah, I did. I said the Mikulski 14 evidence talks about how personal jurisdiction is a transpersonal doctrine, right? That means that you cannot create different rules for different types of entities. But then, just to sort of preface your argument, I wrote a card that's like, and if you do create that exemption, the case is zero and the disset's huge. Because it would destabilize existing procedural law. It would say that in every single court across the entire country, we can apply different procedural norms to different businesses,
Thank you.
which would definitely not cause
The areas
compliance with water.
isolated for water scarcity and their impact evidence for the Middle East and North Africa. What do you think the U.S. does to give nations in those regions water?
Yeah, so the 1NC Hartley evidence is fantastic about this. It says that U.S. scarcity is enough because it's the foremost military power, and how we sort of execute our supply chain policy, our water scarcity policy in the countries that we currently are in, such as including the continent of Africa, is why we sell scarcity.
Why would we launch a nuclear weapon in the Middle East? Because we have less
It's not
water.
that the U.S. would launch a nuclear weapon at first, obviously not. Our argument is that global crises are stressing the system now. Obviously, it would start regional. We think resource scarcity would obviously stress like the Middle East and Africa
But what
first.
is
Then the U.S., Russia, and China would get drawn in through proxy wars.
But how does the U.S. remedy scarcity in those regions that you said are already in crises now?
I think the Hartley evidence specifically makes that argument. It talks about how U.S. scarcity is enough because of our military power, our supply chain power in all of these different countries.
So I'm asking, your impact evidence says there is water scarcity in the Middle East and North Africa, not that water scarcity in the U.S. causes those
Businesses, these corporations that we need to comply with these water scarcity guidelines are across the world, right? The U.S. is the leading power when it comes to water, when it comes to resource distribution. So these companies are U.S. based, but they're across the Middle East, but they're applied to U.S. law, right? They are compliant to U.S. law. So if they're willing to violate U.S. law in Africa and the Middle East, it causes our impact.
What did ours say?
And then Grace is going to the second event, to the first event, obviously.
Okay, advantage one. Advantage one. The soft law counterclaim, the state's counterclaim, the NEG, the politics DA, and then the municipal person. Everyone good? Starting.
They've been approved.
Their internal insurance weekly assume that they don't have a clear explanation for where road rights are actually invested. These altruistic pie in the sky project duties on AI will be enforced. The courts are decided. It's about getting into the court jurisdiction with at least a loose procedural spill over its back. Participation part of the app also fails in innovation is moving across the industry. And all
Say we're kicking the
we're kicking the pattern of turn. Innovation is moving. Rudy and all 22. Despite the dynamic innovation having a record-breaking basis, so it helps survive even top companies. House that records for new business formation, new patents, venture capital, avoid the such as heroes, record applications have been found venture capital plus also moving for about trying to convince people of the ability with innovation that economic force solves all of the $1.22 less manufacturing technology businesses need office structures with innovative with future community the life sciences will invest technology innovations to help resilience for these reading social emphasis on both litigation for select therapies and the certain substitution are using technology to improve outcomes. They realize the imperative that everything ecosystem innovation can deliver effective solutions faster than they can solve only other countries. As in worth in 21, Brazil large number of towns and even in second accent has the number of African politically hoping global population high seven and cities now in the East African Highlands working in African Highlands as switching to action solve Brazil in 20 years to be rebuilt for analysis of the couple of time couple 2015 it does drop some together plus with other aspects the technique couple examples values, cross-unit increases in agricultural examples, inputs to the planetization of goods, services, work, conservative, limited, by human inflammability materials, more flexible caveat, describes since around 1990 U.S. has been consuming less materials market at less materials.
No, you got it. Age. Just say it.
Okay. The aging internally, the artist doesn't say causally that the increase in life expectancy and decrease in term benefits is the defining factor for the aging crisis, and immigration solves the biochar scenario, not outside. Internally, the artist about how biotech companies launch IPOs with consistent solve innovation biochar threat is overblown when it appears through challenges are insurmountable. Volatile even struck back in 600 BC at every event attempt has ended in historical failure, disease. The probability is incredibly low, less than 0.01%. That's what extinction doesn't cause extinction when the word says no. Historical evidence suggests that pandemic can lead to extinction, and the self-black capital can see the purpose test coverage that going forward. They cannot classify the potential current solution that still needs to be in results in exchange jurisdictional person. Like Jay is good, one logic, beautiful, and negative. Is this proof the one is used for the account? Is this proof that is good? They're trying to interpretation skills, education, and bring the plane to net plus 2 easy being outside by 0. Wherever case explanation needs to be lower by 6 until any full speaking person last minute. Ground is grass sugar, screws, to use good. There are no quantity goods to absolutely use it then 3 world false makers with their arguments and left and random attacks on churches or even if statements or instead of compared to ourselves, we're not going to where must win away to be impossible cross my reasons and locality, anything else result with substance fighters for live for offices and politics and the source for the 2 or 3.5 is one of the state's 5 can see the purpose test of combination not going for it. There's reasons for the government team. No, we are the state's 5 that's in the end one and there's still states at least because if you're transversal to whatever nationalizations are getting answers for the purpose of the US is the federal government A. The subway A when it's about like article creating to the states good courts to adjudicate powers of respective states where the judicial power of the United States is national to be wherever states collectively are lowercase Chicago and you'll say unlike the couple of states is happening with the United States report to the end which is collectively you lowercase C but some would take it then ground copies of potential full overseeing federal action over communities there's traditional means politics is subject to federal agents full over disabilities dependent on courts subway T key limits or cases of interest conflict as crossing borders and the benefit on a theory that always work arbitrarily is the vice asked to run to the margin of the critique and take the permanent steps from which not going forward also reasons to be arguing on to the politics and continue controlling or impact really pointing out any offense case for Seattle Kida and not still usually this and the also can be crossed by one is to use to see connections and politics do considerable laws you have to know all this type of trucks they've grounded education on my parents and no longer out of the course not be crossed by the DA still links because they expand jurisdictional rules and personal accountability and have the trucks down to play on the ground that cannot be on even the person that and the person for all things are natural living because it's the right class of entities but specifically gets rid of the corporate types of cities and municipalities and the benefits of hard localities and pursuing exclusionary land use practices which are clearly driving towards behind modern inequality that's impact social class feedback losing social people that political structure that cause society goes preventing their financial exacerbating to every existential threat including climate change ecological class disease and extreme war restraints the case to AC one for both one on argument you both and only engage with the with the plan of capital simultaneously that really solves nothing you can't turn capital and also do the plan or community plan and also hold there not be legal person to reject whatever their patients will cause trying to lazy activating to see to from the capital plan is not something about the capital plan to be interpreted as a way to do the plan of capital social says the plan cannot happen by trying to agenda support and separate which is putting it together it makes some link ground possible to see 3 and 4 the purpose of intrinsic which is the way to use intrinsic purpose with the application of training ground urban advocacy skills from issues punishing process campaign things campaign to see version of value the firm is not different from where we can pass along policies immensely intrinsic productivity for returns especially in motion intrinsic and criminal ways they train words that are the thing application of only intrinsic change the words language social language and more languages social building way meaning that losing language and process meaning meaning to either the language just extreme trend that's sufficient but next sexual propositions good way a level of advocacy skills and they can add words that are there that they can prove that's really clear on my direction policies that skills that we need so they know it's not no difference between what it's functionally kind of where it's always looking at literally anything so pointing at plus to master part and the engineers and reasonable atoms to track bias and require some capacity to constant and then the plan they recognize any kind of might result in the absolute needs with subject policies and comparison boards prevention and which destroys fairness equal skills held in 99 cities with the ability to be the convincing way to should be more than the language not just an instrumentation should be taught to be part of false labor and it should be prejudice understanding prosecution and every words of way alternatives for words which source methods of language or conditions which include the whole plans of which you risk examples of place for person another fit the plan may be different correctly to see 5 or something to 1 or because of evidence that a person solvable numbers outreach reasons to these policies with exclusion practices as they receive protection via incorporation as an artificial legal entity under state home rule charters which make them immune to court actions to modify legal census key focus and 21 census important to plan and any actions sensitive and important under law with the law except for the state municipalities raising issues or answering questions that is not necessary how sees fit for the law effectively to not whether they may elsewhere how or administration with the person release will become presidential for another side market at another side to see 6 rules and causes what the request of inequalities land use restrictions from excessive control by local governments here and 15 place for the pandemic and opportunities economic basis with moments housing education nutrition transportation and requesting food service social discrepancies for two officers from most importantly place for whether employee I local control of local governance market out local governance to see is not a complete argument to explain how it overwhelms our trillion to see evidence impact water impact evidence moves for defense and qualities at risk amplifiers and structure creating and exacerbating social people and political switching drugs destroy society and undermining humanity capacity to respond to every other crisis to their evidence sexes and results from mixed draws from studies that are 30 years old creating quality unright institutional quality yes impacts in June 21 reports to why institutions for preventive education health foreign policy scientific institutions research and quality institutional quality and quality legally comes from the long term inequality of institutions institutional behavior towards long term trajectories.
Who's that? Advantage 1, Advantage 2, the municipalities counter plan, the Federalism DA.
You put federalism last, right? Municipalities.
Sorry?
Federalism last.
Federalism.
Sorry, I'm just looking at.
Okay. Everyone get the doc? Yep. Cool. All concepts don't apply. Innovation is generally about AI news markets, but not about real advisory for advances. Broadly, it's about how dark horse orders are unique, effective capital systems being allocated inefficiently now, specifically these channels with renewables, biotech, and solve, and other speaks that we use all other countries' investment markets are global, but its fruits are neutral markets on federalism, yes, Asian crisis impact causes domestic discontent and national increases, political pressures and decreases, domestic checks and lash out, that's glad up, yes, biotech disease impact is not a super genetic engineering technology that's democratized requires events, pathogen defenses to solve independently of extinction causes societal disruption that culminates in conflict and extinction. That's the when it's the stability advantage, starting with the counterbalance to one permutation, you both ban robo advisors and best rights in them, duties in them. You're not going for the agent stuff here, but you can obviously just do both. You can legally ban the existence of entity and prosecute the people who make robo advisors while still saying they would have the additional duties if they were created. No ban, or you can ban bioweapons until legally regulate them or criminalize them or best rights in them. If they do not exist, or would ban all aspects of AGI, which is race education, as definition answer for the choosy shooting charges that that's context specific, can be partial enough or hard. The immediate application of rights or duties does not solve the case. Their entire app was about autonomous robo advisors. Anyone can go to Betterment, open up a bank account now. Let's manage my algorithm, but those algorithms suck. They are based on price trends, not risk factors, not ecological factors, not complex market dynamics. They're not autonomous, which is enough to truly trade on a more informed basis than the retail investor. Autonomy is key. The capital cost of mass uncertainty, which shows that those succeeded on the capital flows. Now, the term crop opportunity one rate hikes are old news. The Fed is like rates for about times the past year alone. Investors price it is already moderating inflation. There's no possible way the plan can disrupt that since they're most discard. Recent discard from several months ago, so the effect is locked into. The status goes worse. Capital markets are unstable with undisciplined. Retail investors treat as asset level structurally. This keeps where the economy is stable and snapshot metrics like unemployment does not matter. For link is structurally inevitable. 3 robo advisors solve capital stability. I don't think the two articulates a great word for why they undermine the economy other than investor confidence. That was the case. So we know adoption that was cross but our entire app about liability gas contributing to those investor concerns. The app rectifies that and solves Daniel's stable uptake robo advisor system. I don't know how we didn't answer the link to when the links for robo advisors are less efficient and more biased. From cars led to the opposite. The 2EC robo advisors do not get tired enough so they should be biased and more efficient and effective capital investment based on longer time scales to maximize long-term sustainability. All the works that 2EC overlooked just red word cars like US News Lincoln Pulse from 2015. Before we had any real good AI systems we're talking about, so does not apply. Now the municipalities counter plan 2 is one permutation go for the plan is the federal government, and the counter one is the state or vice versa. Different jurisdictions and different levels of person know the same variant in the permutations we made on the counter one. The case we clarified this explanation and cross-text that solves in a benefit. If the plan is just the federal government, the states can ban municipal personnel. That solves basically the gap at the federal level. The counter one, the state level, and a benefit is municipal personnel bad. Answering the courts and the other page topics notably far worse because it makes the states counter overpowered. We collectively agree to reject that topic. The most topically relevant integration goes out by RCD 5. The US means the states and the NDT not possession of regulatory words to this individual corporation or anybody person. It's the best rating shows on the 22. Governments argue the best rating in the US means the 50 states and the DC. Now 2C3 per land in the United States should hold incorporated cities, not legal persons, not functioning intrinsically, they went to intrinsic, which is all that should matter. Because sexual competition is silly that be below. If the grounds of the counterbalance hold that all humans, entities are not persons, that also must hold that municipalities are not persons, a fiat mandate and function of the counterbalance. So we can review that fiat function of the counterbalance. The burden of competition is to conclusively establish their position against ours. Textual competition is silly. If text or policy shorthand, not exact description implementation, which will virtually synonymous with the text rewarding reflects strategic choice worth any coherent metric for competition. Social competition is all that matters. Wars on a page, which is silly for firm debates about what advocacies actually do. That means your language's functional interpretation is normally bad for debate. Our interpretation checks our residual offense because we would only justify function, not intrinsic textual issues purpose or a limited number of those, and those really only apply to counterbalance with artificial that benefits of the fiat and D's like this one, the alternatives, a host of conditioning plan. I'm not going to word before I show counterbalance root class and cause walkable recycling that is bad. You should view counterbalance holistically as a non-arbitrary means of marking out counterbalance, and this one should not engage the act without incurring the issues of a non-theoretical right line, not the advocacy. You can find a word to pick out of which ones reading them, forgetting the plan, also note fiat. You can get everything is the counterbalance, the fiat, and non-arbitrary benefits, no require you to get a case tag. Functional competition establishes a clear theoretical right line, obviously it's not solve the act, but just need to mitigate the benefit a little bit. One person not keep our facilities will exist regardless of legal status approved by the factor. Evidence discussing status quo inequities between cities, no evidence, delegation from person municipalities are coming, no evidence. That's the critical contributor inequality. Two obvious all causes racism during manner lack of social program for redistricting. The American political system is not unequal because New York City has been called a legal person. There are about land use restrictions happening now. We know inequality impact that's most of the correlation between inequality and college. Accounting for statistical factors. Federalism, no turn scheme stuff at the top, no form shopping. The plan is both the fed the states is uniform. There's no reform shop. Turn case arguments are about patent law and the AFF of course, a sweet generous person. The plan is easy to cabin. 2 1 2, no link. 1. The plan is the federal government in all states, so it expresses a coherent unified theory of personal jurisdiction, no disharmony, no leading conflicts, no possible way that would cause water scarcity because the total amount of water remains the same. The Fed is obviously not going to let Mississippi go without water. For the same reason you can sue Google now, it's existing all the care about all the states internationally. So reason AI requires a distinct legal precedent from that too. The plan is grounded in contract law and a sweet generous precedent is not a broad application of legal duties. There would be no grounds for an expansion of personal jurisdiction because the act only says AI's finished duties under contract, which is tapped broader precedent. That's A-earned. That's a critical distinction. The cards are not about the arbitration process. We can adjudicate individual contracts that have broader determination of the validity of personal jurisdiction that restricts duties to entities firmly granted by contracts. Equals 21 fiduciary status arise number of ways by contracts that two fiduciary categories of contract failure for positive generation about relation to fiduciary status attachment to breach. There are cause of action grades or pragmatics. Equals 21 persons not converted philosophical social and legal theories, but pragmatic rationality will grant with full status arbitrarily on the basis of a person. The method system must recognize that a legal person free to decide the system is not forced by robots respectively within certain dimensions. No federalism internal link. 1. No relation between a person and water policy. Federalism compartmental alliance. That's Gherkin is even true for horizontal federalism. AI laws on the effective way. States allocate water resources. They have good cards on horizontal federalism solves water policy. Not by the plan undermines the model of horizontal federalism for water policy. 2. All causes should be seen in action on the environment. Water distribution that's far more likely to contribute to water scarcity and get muddled in the relationship between institutional balance power and water distribution. 3. Doesn't solve globally. They're link. It's just about the U.S. and the impact of other countries to include Alabama. It's not going to war, which we see with a pretty complete argument here. There's no clear modeling plan anywhere in the 1 and C and the 2 and C. Didn't even properly answer this argument. They now read a modeling card or a card explaining why federalism impacts water anywhere other than the U.S. Finally, no water wars impact is by pure substitution anywhere than said. And since studies inflate water for purity for other factors like national ideologies, which we see evidence of water wars, like the 16 water wars, this document says struck register the water for global and research document of the factors for no wars fought over 1,000 years celebration of the cases for cooperating more than a thought traces of books each check in 15. There's not a single water being fought in less than 1,500 years. The direction of the march for wars that should not take national country. Even more than entire parts of continues to find discussion on war wars that there chief resolution large world violence and it is cooperative water banks and any seven additional treaty cooperation the water constitutional water war. Seven thoughts adjustment of the BC. So regulation water is going to have this cooperation is from within you.
extend, you said I'm not extending like aging. Do you mean like?
I was not extending the agent terms in the case.
But yes, but
Impact.
you said I'm not extending aging. You mean firm?
The
Or did you-
agents.
Agents, got it.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
But yes, extending aging.
Yes.
Okay, got it. The order is the disab, then the counterclaim, then the advantage to the market's advantage, and then the advantage on democratization advantage.
When you say the counterclaim, you mean, off.
Municipal personnel, yeah. The advantage two and advantage one. Okay. Is anyone not ready? Dartmouth loses this debate because they have practically conceded on the case that they cause a fast economic war and they have no capacity to solve that only in the long term, which means that you can only die twice, which always on time frame. They've also dropped that we have straight on the case on the dissent, which means that even if we don't win our external water scarcity impact, it does not matter because we have won that they cause both of their advantages. Water scarcity, though, still goes nuclear, global crisis, already stressing the system, resource scarcity, parents cooperation makes you lure, state separate and fills the space, a fragile space that excited since the Cold War. U.S. scarcity is enough because it's a world's military power. These companies are transnational and supply chains are integrated. That's the hardly evidence now. The main reason that you are automatically voting negative is because we have straight turned the case of plan, caused an immediate economic crisis, that's supposed to turn on the case, and the lack of procedural certainty destroys innovation and hardens high market volatility on advantage two. One, yes, foreign shopping patent law is key to your internally foreign shopping dex tech innovation. It creates unpredictable and non-uniform patent adjudicated innovators don't know the contours of the right. The challengers that can always select a favoring jurisdiction and it shifts money away from R&D to directly cover litigation expenses as the more evidence or evidence says that startups need patent protection to innovate, which means that the plan broadly creates legal disputes that cause all the impacts on advantage one and advantage two. Remember that there's only uniqueness for Trent's case because we have evidence that innovation is high and broker advisors are not key, but they have no uniqueness for our link arguments. That means that only because the legal system is broadly stable is the plan not have. Are there impacts not happening now? You can't go forum shopping if there's only one store, but they mean the 50 states compete for the plaintiff's business, which means that they still cause all their impacts. Three, ecology advantages does not turn out their environmental arguments do not matter because argument is about allocating scarce water that has absolutely nothing to do with any of their impacts, which means that the disattributes the case far faster than the inverse can be true. Now, the link debate states no link argument does not take out the states that are arguments that the federal and state rules are transversal, so the plan being the 50 states in DC makes it that it's still collectively uniform law that gives AI standing. That is what uproots the legal system. The idea that robots can have standing, that means that the courts have to revise all of its laws about personal jurisdictions since they apply to humans, not robots, which don't have a home or place that can be served. That means that the states broadly is even worse maybe than the federal government doing it because it means that each individual state has a different law, and when that inevitably spills over, the plan being grounded in contract law cannot take out the disad because the ordinance just says that they restrict duties to one area of law, i.e. you couldn't apply duties to other forms of AI or other duties to robo-advisors. That against other spillover dissent, but not ours. Now, the one area has simply dropped that if they win that they're exempted from transpersonality or that there's some reason why they're the states, it destroys solvency, business confidence, innovation, and the economy trends, personal rules, support, core procedural values, clarity, uniformity, simplicity, judicial efficiency, which means the federal government can have sort of a uniform policy on what this adaptability means is the best thing to solve for impacts. That means you go negative on perception because without personal jurisdiction over AI at the national level, lawsuits against them simply won't happen. That makes the app unenforceable. Now, yes, Senator Trolling, the Tweezy was woefully incomplete here. Ban new era one of your arguments incentivizes sandbagging, screws, negative strategy, horizontal federalism does solve water scarcity. It's the idea of governance model, but it overcomes cost constitutional limits on federal environmental regulation. It also decks our solvency blended federal action is key. It's necessary. Storing except the Hobbit says that it entrenches binds and policies increasing costs circumvented through local politics. Yes, there's an internal link between personal jurisdiction and federalism because personal jurisdiction is calibrated to serve horizontal federalism. Now it prevents states from overreaching by hearing laws that belong to other states. It also means that businesses have a sort of consistent exercise of power that they need to follow in terms of water scarcity, which is what causes them to broadly sort of adapt to our impacts. Now there's no office in the 2AC. It's all captured by our evidence. It does solve globally. This was the only complete argument in the 2AC, but we've made arguments in process and the 2AC about why these companies are transnational. Yes, they're based in the United States and comply to U.S. law, but that's the reason the link applies, because U.S. law tells them how they can and can't distribute water or regulate water in the Middle East or Africa, which is why the link is so huge. Now, yes, there's a water source impact. The link is scarcity and water is robust. Only we have impacts from 2023 about water-related diseases, crop failures, ecological destruction, natural violence, nuclear war, water-related conflicts, all dropped by the winning hour. The Anglican and New 2015 evidence are so old, and they don't assume that water wars haven't been fought because cases are being successfully adjudicated in the status quo, and there's broader compliance by these litigators to sort of not overhaul the entire legal system, which proves that it's just uniqueness for us, because by overhauling what businesses have to follow now, they will no longer comply with these treaties or diplomacy that they say are preventing these wars now, which says that they cause wars in countries like India and Pakistan. Now, the counterplan, we're not going for it. You can see the permutation. There's no reason that it applies. We answered the stage argument on the other foe. The capital advantage, that's advantage true. The turn is also a very good route to voting negative. The lawyer does not even attempt to read parts. Prohibitive links to the turn. It doesn't plan, which means the robo advisor would still exist. You can't ban robo advisors and all send them to them without at least creating them, but also judge kick. They didn't accept conditionality. We don't need this counterplan to win at all, because we've read specific evidence that says that they're low in the status quo and there wouldn't be any adoption. Now, algorithms suck and autonomy. Good links don't matter. We have made arguments that rate hikes old news or argument. We have 23 evidence that says that the economy will achieve a soft landing now because humans will make sure that people don't rapidly sell off assets. But that means you go neg on time frame, because all of our internal links are about the long term, i.e. long term. What does the bias of robot advisors versus humans do? What does the efficiency of robot versus humans do? That does not matter when we have cards that says that they cause a fast economic decline that massively outweighs the positive impact of the AFF long term, because we're all dead by the time the AFF solves. The Tracy conceded that only panic reactions and mass freak out kills the economy. We can't weather the storm of interest rates as long as stockholders don't react and sell all of their assets. That won't do that now, but if they do, it certainly triggers a massive recession that turns both advantages, because it means that advantage one also won't be implemented. The Federal Reserve is setting out increased interest rates. The only way that we avoid those panic and short-term impulses is that they're inheriting robo-advisors by allowing human advisors to sort of reassure their assets, but they conflict with that, which proves that they can't solve any of their link turns in the launching and the populism stuff. It's obviously all driven by a massive economic decline, which is their internal link. Now, the democratization advantage, I only need to accept defense. Every single one of their impacts relies on an aspirational fake assumption that robo-advisors will channel money into all these projects or be profitable. No evidence says that anything inherent about them would actually cause it, and there's no reason why humans would adopt it if their internal link is true. Innovation is booming, which means the status quo is fine. The Rudy evidence says that we have set records for new business formation, and we have innovation in disease, in the climate, in venture capitalism, and more. The U.S. Census Bureau says that investment in the environment and disease tech is solving now. Also proves that absent those pattern protections in the status quo, they cause all the impacts, which means that it's also uniqueness for our terms. The warming stuff, international emissions zero, the internal link, tech solves, population growth has declined, the TFP has doubled, U.S. tonnage is up, we've reduced materials decline, we have all our metals up by 25%. That's the gross evidence, which proves that the warming is in a fantastic state now. The biochar stuff and aging stuff, it does not matter. Empirics prove that challenges are insurmountable. Since 600 BC, every single advanced attempt that fails, aging will cause existential risk, because care about productivity would stay the same, which means that retirees can just be replaced by robots and immigrants in Japan and every other country is not cause. Probability of disease is zero. It doesn't cause extinction. Or it says there's no historical evidence, and virality means that it will not spread.
1. Advantage 2.
The environment offers on activity is the fundamental basis for all life on Earth. Rising sea levels, biology, life, declining resources, all means it's existential to all life on Earth. Economic decline and water scarcity are a mere blip compared to the destruction of the entire biosphere. The DNA truly are silly and conflict with water scarcity and empirically nice. It is far more likely that the plants and the plant ESG investment solves environmental destruction versus the likelihood that the plan may cause a horizontal federalism to stop water scarcity from escalating randomly in other countries, or a short-term economic decline in the short term. There are simply far fewer internally to the advantage than there are compared to the DA. Now, the turnover so good beyond this advantage that you should just strike it off from your flow. You did not make a clean argument. The plan does cause adoption of robo-advisors. They adopt trust centralized about life and fiduciary duties. Incentivize broad adoption of robo-advisors because consumers know they have a line in the backstop of insurance safety. In the end of the robo-advisor with an error that innovation moving arguments, drop the innovation moving arguments are generic to none of robo-advisor arguments. That is uniquely good to help the environment. These warnings and optimization problems require efficient investment for renewable energy and green energy. Saying all existential crisis, not good for disease or aging crisis, tech solving now is a blip, did not catch a complete word, but all our edits for 22 assume that none of that tech is solving now because it's not efficiently being channeled via robo-advisors or authorizing access to technology to ensure the environment is increasing now. And most of these were all unwarranted blips anyway. The warming defense was not responsible to all of our bio-heat defense, which is broader than just the warming. These are other environmental ones that can be caused regardless of warming. So, cause extinction for our evidence and studies that they cause extinction now. The stability advantage at the top, 2 hour basically did not even attempt to answer the 1 hour articulation of permutation vote. We can legally ban robo-advisors while also saying that if robo-advisors exist, so as to write drop the example of bioweapons, which are typically banned under international law, but you can still legally regulate them or criminalize them or vest rights in them, even if they don't yet exist. They have no justification for why this is not a legitimate permutation. The vest drop or vest definition says the vest is context specific and can be partial to resolve the term. Now, the term proper, they are wrong with the act of a short-term economic downturn. They read these cards about Fed rate hikes that are several months old and where the economic effects have been amply priced in. They have read leaked cards about robo-advisors from 2015. Back before we had any AI technology, we're talking about the idea that robo-advisors can verify fiduciary duties would cause investors to freak out and cause resulting economic meltdown is ridiculous. And there's truly the threshold of uncertainty this term relies upon. And Silicon Valley Bank, FTX, the stock market downturn, AI transactions, Adobe, Google, concerns over AI automation, the trade war, Ukraine conflict, etc. All shaped up this internally. There's no reason that investors will be uniquely scared of robo-advisors, but they simply choose not to put their money in them. But we read internally that they largely considered about resolving liability to assuage industry returns, resulting in rating downside risk of the technology. And also not really expert neighbor articles about humans being more biased and being worse than robo-advisors, which can't stabilize the economy. They never really do any comparison between our internal versus their economy either. So this is at best marginal thing. Largely improves market stability by ending speculative retail trading, which ensures that there is stability in the market. It saves off first economic decline and populism. There was no impact not for this part of this advantage either. So the plan solves long-term sustainability about artificial intelligence to ensure that robo-advisors don't undermine capital stability. So the risk of this turn is marginal. Now the federalism disadvantage at the top, no turn space arguments. I only need to answer the link turn space arguments because the others lie. We need the cumulative risk of disadvantage. The rest of the arguments were answered on the case. 1. No foreign shopping. Consistently conceded or both federal government and the state scheme. There's nowhere else to foreign shops. All courts without the same theory of person. There's no term effect. This argument extended. In worst case, robo-advisors will be assigned a place of jurisdiction. They'll all be below. 2nd, patent law can't be given starters from Emory. Interlink the patent law. The ask fiduciary duties are extremely clear to start because unless them hash out the details, the contract and link to this about the app. Finally, there's none of this talk about the water impact, work impact, into your wars, multifaceted economic invasion, identity, history, etc. All complete the reason for water crisis. Broader one in our card, it's existing treaties, check scarcity, and the NEG evidence is excessive service and relationship between water and war is wrong. Even if there's some risk of this water impact, all this bolsters or internally take as well because it hurts the U.S. and keep improving water scarcity. Now, the link to make, there's no limit to the disadvantage. There's no limit to the disadvantage. The plan is not make water models of wars on the federalism. 1. It's the federal government and all of the states and sponsors of all the evidence that has been read in supports that interpretation. The result is a coherent and unified theory of personal jurisdiction across the system that harmonizes and solves interstate disputes. No one can disagree. There will be no form of trouble that solves water scarcity. The result of disputes is 13 to like go within electricity, go without water, just because the Supreme Court speaks the theory of personal jurisdiction. But 2nd, the plan is grounded in contract law. It is not a broader application of legal duties. It is cabined from the legal system generally and for choosing a herd. There will be no grounds for expansion of personal jurisdictions. The plan says that AI has fiduciary duties when a contract says so. There is no independent basis for the duty. All the requires are about the legal system generally that the contract-driven model of arbitration which can adjudicate individual contract without record of broader legal determination on personal jurisdiction, even if AI has a place that can be served that has no impact on that precedent never extending on contract law. 3. Logically, no snow or horizontal federalism is part of the license of the black cross remains plans not require serving robots without home replace strong or re-raising the plan. The likely amount of the state predicts that the as corporations are assigned a jurisdiction for the purposes of meeting and resolving disputes and signing contracts are opposite because from the foundation of the jurisdiction broadly destroyed. Failed to answer the readers how we can sue now, even if they're correct about their legal arguments now. Finally, they have no internal link to this disadvantage. 1. Person is not related water policy. Like I do is not related. How the states allocate water, we can't get out of this by saying horizontal federalism 45 this internal take out concerns the relationship between the plan and the underwriting the model of horizontal federalism for water. The 2 standards are only good on that horizontal as it tells water policy. He was telling them to do easy process all the time talking that rather than this internal take out. Second, if you're right, the water study is so fragile and dropped that all causes like GMP actually lacking in environmental policy are much more likely to discriminate national distribution of water. The plan is also more likely to solve this given our arguments about the relationship between Roman advisors and ecological issues. Like 3, obviously, it's not solved globally. Water scarcity in Mississippi does not implement existing water scarcity in the Middle East. The companies are committed to transnational is fucking made up. They have no guard establishment as far as it makes 0 sense. If companies that manage water scarcity in the U.S. suddenly need to stop getting water to countries in other places, in other countries, in those countries who fill it, so there's no reason to interrelate.
Who sent the NEG doc?
Yeah.
Oh, I misheard that. We sure about
That's the three games.
Oh, huh.
Yeah, I checked that. Yeah.
No, I lied. I'm the one who messed it up.
We'll take the one.
Oh, yeah, I also. Did you?
minutes. Yeah.
announce. All right. Congratulations to both teams. The decision is a 2-1 for the negative thumb. Okay. I vote affirmative, concluding that the affirmative is the only way to resolve otherwise inevitable environmental destruction, and that the risk of water conflicts owing to the collapse of horizontal federalism is extremely speculative in a far smaller scope of eternal impact. I'm not really feeling this rate hikes turn. I think the affirmative has a link turn, and also no one ever read a terminal impact for why I care about vast econ collapse. The affirmative read a scenario about like speculative asset bubbles. No one read diversionary war or whatever. My big issue with this 2NR is that you start off by saying you're straight turning both advantages, but then you don't. You extend defense to the stuff that you straight turn. You extended defense to bioterror. You extended defense to disease. If you had gone for a 2NR that was like, they totally fuck up all sorts of biomedical innovation. They have said that disease and bioterror are existential. We have a way better internal link to that. Game over because you dropped this. I am totally neg. But in this scenario, you did not straight turn the scenario they went for. The scenario they went for was about current liability regimes make us so uncertain about how robo-advisors work, there will not be any uptake. Therefore, plan gets implemented equals uptake. If you had either arguments on robo-advisors are being uptaken now, we have uniqueness on that question, or if you did comparative analysis saying that the legal uncertainty caused by the plan means robo-advisors will not get uptaken, then you have it like straight turn to that advantage. But ultimately, I conclude no straight turn to that advantage that Dartmouth goes for, very little defense on the ESG scenario. Then I look at this DA and I'm like, I'm with you on the link story, but it's just at some point it becomes kind of speculative, these long-term impacts that are like, I don't really understand why water management of resources within the US connects to resources abroad, especially when the affirmative has like interactions with this because they're also talking about resource scarcity, et cetera. So ultimately I conclude the DA risk is there, but it doesn't compare to otherwise inevitable like environmental destruction. I was not really feeling this rate hikes turn. Partially what I mentioned earlier is that just like we needed a terminal impact to like why hard collapse is bad. That just like didn't appear at any point. It was this like lingering question for me. But also because I just think that Dartmouth is winning this basic argument of like, if people don't want to use robo-advisors, they don't have to. That means that then there's not going to be that large scale uptake. It's sufficient to solve our scenarios because it maybe means there's uptake within like the ESG sector. That's enough. And then if it's this question of like robo-advisors get panicked, then I'm like, I don't know why this leads to short-term collapse because like robo-advisors take a little bit to get taken up. I also don't know why this is like the entire economy, et cetera. So I think if the 2NR had been straight turning the disease stuff and the aging crisis scenario, easy neg ballot. But since that wasn't how it was explained, Dartmouth was able to sneak out and win by saying our scenario is slightly distinct from what you straight turned.
So for me, I went back and forth. I'm unclear on AFF impacts here. I think the issue for me is that throughout the debate, I'm confused on the role that robo-advisors play post-affirmative and how that they implementing them or whatever the AFF does is sufficient enough to resolve a level of investment that is not incurring the status quo for warming or for green technology. There are multiple times in the debate where we're discussing how like not everyone has to use robo-advisors, how human advisors or human involved market players are still involved in the process. I'm unclear on how that's able to resolve for the internal links that your evidence specifies, talking about crypto scams or like just retail trading writ large and whatnot. Ultimately, I think that the disad would probably turn the case resulting in foreign shopping, which takes a level of research and development away from the internal links that you're going for, which is this green technology stuff, which I guess I'm not necessarily given a good answer for outside of no forum shopping. And I think this goes for both teams. I felt like the most important aspects of the debate, the link turns the case in the disad, and the internal link stuff was super blippy, and we're not slowing down in this aspect, which, I mean, inevitably we're going to miss things. And so I think that the lack of a coherent answer to this forum shopping stuff, while maybe it doesn't definitely would probably at worst result in a zeroing of solvency in the AFF, which makes it difficult for me to vote AFF, especially when coupled with the kind of muddled internal link scenarios we're going for in the 2AR or in the AFF writ large. And so I think that it makes it easier to vote neg on this water scarcity stuff. While I do think that the internal links there are also confusing, I don't think we're slowing down and leveraging the AFF and explaining the AFF in a way that is coherent, and using that as an explanation for why, or in coupling that with an explanation for why the internal link is like non-existent on the disad. I think if we're able to like prioritize that and explain the AF in a way that outweighs the water scarcity stuff writ large, it's easier to vote AF, but I don't think that happens in the 2AR. I agree with David that the econ turn stuff doesn't really apply or isn't a thing. Like there's no impact here. And even then again, like I just don't know how it's not inevitable given the fact that like robo-advisories exist in the status quo. And that's also another thing I'm unclear in like the differentiation between the AF and the status quo, because there are robo-advisors in the SQO and a lot of your evidence talks about that. And so I'm not really explaining for why the AF as a legal vessel is enough to, result in this change in investment that solves the impacts. I'll let Daniel go.
Yeah, I mean, I like agree with the substance of all of that. I think that the disad is better than you're giving them credit for. It's at first I'm like, oh, great, another bullshit federalism DA. Congratulations, did I win the lottery or what? But it's actually, these cards are pretty good. And they like, I think you need a better answer to this forum shopping argument ultimately. Because I think their evidence is fairly decent on the breakdown that would result if their cards are good on the question of like courts will treat, if you say that AI has this particular type of construction within the courts, they are not able to distinguish between the standard which you mandate and the standard that gets applied to humans. That means that like courts will be unable to distinguish between those two things. It breaks down personal jurisdiction, which means like personal jurisdiction is what it requires you to have substantial physical contact in the jurisdiction where the lawsuit is taking place. Since robots aren't people, they don't like your robo whatever is not a person. It doesn't have a physicality, so it doesn't have a presence there. Which means then that since that standard has to be applied across the board, there's no physical requirement. Personal jurisdiction just kind of like goes out the window. That destabilizes the way people make choices into which forums they file lawsuits in, which is breaks down the kind of place where I hang up the most is like how does that spill over from lawsuits into the sort of like idea of like why will that make states stop cooperating over water enforcement? And I think they have two answers to that. One is that it generally causes states to fight it out over sovereignty, which I think their card is okay on that question. I think the second argument is that it means that corporations, which are asking courts to determine like how laws are enforced, will pick the least restrictive state or jurisdiction, which then means that they will have to apply the least restrictive interpretation of laws to the way that they distribute or engage with water, or the way that they stop or start polluting water resources, which is like the other part of their internal link, which I think is like pretty good. And then, yeah, I agree with Clayton on the rest of the substance, but I think that kind of mentioned, I really thought this DA, no offense, would be garbage, and then I read the cards and it was like much better than I thought it was going to be, so there you go.
Was very, very into the DA. I like the content. Yeah, I think the main thing for me for the DA was just like scope of solvency versus scope of impact. Like if you had done more on that like card that you had in the 2NC that was just like even minor risks matters. Like if you had even just done some work on like water scarcity in the US kills people, that's bad. This robo-advisor shit is all totally made up. Like, hell yes, I'm into it. Because like this link story is incredible and the turns case cards are absurd. So I think for me, it was just a question of I didn't think the turns case was sufficiently applicable to their scenario.
Okay, that all makes sense. I have a couple of questions. I think both of you mentioned forum shopping as like part of the turns case, since the part of the curiously, you mentioned like disunity between federal, like different courts' application of the universal jurisdiction standard as being a contributor to.
Tyler, I'm so sorry. Can you speak up because I cannot hear you over this godforsaken
You
fan.
mentioned disunity between different courts' interpretations of the personal jurisdiction standard as a reason why this forum shopping occurred, like relating to those at least the court with these kind of restrictions. I'm wondering how that applies in the context of the AF's arguments about
applying a uniform standard across all 50 states, across all jurisdictions, so would it be conflicts and standards that would introduce fast market shopping?
Right. I don't think that's necessarily responsive to their argument, which is it changes the way that personal jurisdiction is understood, which means because personal jurisdiction is based on like if I am present, if I commit a tort in the state of Virginia, right? Or they could also choose to sue me in the state of Maryland.
What does that turn the case? Like, what does that turn the enforcement of the AFF here? The AFF is still uniformly applied.
Right, because that standard gets cross-applied to the way that other lawsuits are interpreted, right? So the fact that there is a uniform standard breaks down personal jurisdiction in other areas. Their cards seem to indicate.
So, it seems like this also like assumes winning the link that it implicates personal jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So wondering how you interpreted that in the context of our arguments about contract law providing a caveat or a shield against spilling over into broader questions of personal jurisdiction in the context.
I mean, I think if you want to jump in there, but I think that their argument is that carving out exceptions is not possible. Either A is not possible, right? Because the way that contract law is applied, contract law still falls under personal jurisdiction, right? It's where you have signed the contract, right? It is a question of how you have signed that contract. And then so if I sign the contract in Virginia, I can be sued in Virginia, or I can still be sued in Maryland where I have substantial business contacts or whatever.
Yeah, to substantiate on that, there wanted to see evidence. I was concluding like NEG direction on the link analysis. The Michalski card has a couple of lines that are really good about why well-established doctrines use residency and intent as cornerstones. So that's exactly what Daniel was referencing about residency. Essentially, the way I understood the DA was like, even if they're like, you can create this new category, it still requires a reconceptualization of personal jurisdiction in the first place to some extent. And Emory said the way that reconceptualization goes is universal personal jurisdiction. That's bad. You all just need to have a distinguishment saying like, no, here's the alternative conceptualization of how we view jurisdiction, even with this weird new introduction.
And I think that kind of goes back to a little bit of like understanding what the app does, because I'm unclear like how the app's able to, like you kind of just continue to say it's contract law, it's different, but like again, I'm unclear what the app does for robo-advisors, and like I understand you give them duties or whatever, but like I don't know how that uniquely is contract law or is exogenous of what they're doing.
And I think their argument then, which is even if the AFF carves out an exception, that's still bad because it still breaks down. Right now, we have a very concrete understanding of personal jurisdiction is based on state residency or like the action that you take. And even carving out one exception in contract law would still break that down. And then that breakdown spills over.
The two are also, I think, contain the argument that if it's true that residency is the cornerstone of originally personal jurisdiction law, then like robo-advisors will have to have a state of residency in the same manner that like Google has a state of residency for purposes of contract law. And what made it, maybe not granted the most evidence, but like what was the
I mean, I think some cards on that question or like front loading that argument much earlier as a response to this would be better for me. Just like I have that on the flow in the 2AR. I like, maybe it's because of the fan or the blip or whatever, but like I really don't have that earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more just like get in the weeds on what it means to be distinct in contract law. Like when you are getting in these weeds of like, like the residency requirement is irrelevant, you obviously just say the robo-advisor is housed in this state. Like just getting it to the level of saying like, even though they have a card, just like fuck their card, it's wrong.
That's exactly the way that corporates.
I just didn't think that was there. The thing you said earlier about like the robot, you can find the location of the robot. This card that they are talking about is totally
assumes that robots are just like out in the ether. That is not the way this would be interpreted. Or you could make the argument, and I think really sit on this argument that is just like, this would be in the same way that corporations have personhood, right? That robo AI would have a personhood that is located for corporations. It's located in the state where you incorporate. And so we sue Google in Delaware, or we sue them in California where they have substantial business contacts, or we get to federal, diversity jurisdiction, and it doesn't fucking matter.
And then, I guess,
Which is maybe the other good argument, which is all of this would be preempted because of federal diversity jurisdiction, which means that their dissat is fucking irrelevant because this would all be in federal court because we would be suing across state lines anyway. But
And then I guess last question, I'm going to go to this. Like in terms of the internal link to the PA, like internal link between global water disputes and domestic federalism concerns, how did you evaluate that? It was just a question of like forum shopping means mitigates the case. So
It was mostly the forum shopping stuff. Like I think if you answer the forum shopping stuff and even just do a little bit more work on the internal link of the AFF, it's pretty easy to beat the internal link on the dissat, but I didn't know.
okay. That's my other question. Thank you.
great to meet you. Oh, go ahead.
And so I will, especially have a term for releasing there, but thank you.
Yeah,
Great job.
great to meet everyone.